Welcome to the world of stand-up. Hey, what's up, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of Stand Up. As you're aware, I am your host, Bryce Prescott, and I'm super grateful for today's episode. I do have to say, it is another solo episode because, you can see that I'm by myself, which is great. I've been having some scheduling conflicts. I've got some really amazing guests lined up for the next coming weeks that I'm excited for you guys to be able to see and hear their stories and to just, kind of see the magic we do over here. But the past week, I had a pretty transformative experience. It was one of those life-altering experiences. And because the tagline of this show is a show about life and laughs, I wanted to talk about some of the funny things that happened in this life-changing moment for me. Here's the problem that I see, and here's how that problem relates to what I'm about to share with you. The problem that I see is we as a culture and as a society, we are deathly afraid of violence. We live in this bubble-wrapped world where we forget the role and the power that violence plays as we mold our histories. Now, I want to make sure that I'm very clear here. I am not advocating violence. It is a mantra and belief of mine that the best way to have peace is to be prepared for violence. And that in an odd way, the threat of violence does create peace. So if you understand that and you unpack that statement a little bit, what you'll find is that, in order to prepare for violence or prepare for war, you have to then know how to be violent. Now, I'm not saying or encouraging anybody to become violent. I'm saying you need to prepare how to become violent. I know that's nuanced, but I think you'll get where I'm going here in a second. I had this crazy opportunity. One of my really good friends, a gentleman by the name of Sean Whalen. Sean's out of his mind, dude. Like, this guy is he's about as alpha as it comes, and he is all about emergency preparedness. The guy has more guns than I could ever count, and he knows how to use them. He knows how to train. He's prepared. Like, he's got this whole plan that he's created for his life, where no matter the situation, that he and his family would be protected and prepared. I mean, this dude even has satellite phones. Like, he's like, if the power was to go out, I'm still going to be able to contact my loved ones because my wife has one and all these other people that are in my circle have them. It's a really, really great concept. Takes a lot of commitment to fulfill. And it's worth it, but it takes a lot of commitment. Most people in our day and age aren't thinking about stuff like that, like how to clear a room in your house if there's an intruder, like how to handle it if somebody was to pull a gun on you, and what you would do in preparation for that. I mean, these are the type of things that are realities for a lot of people in cities and where there's crime and whatnot, but we don't actually conceptualize that we might actually be somebody that would need to learn a skill set on how to de-escalate a violent situation or how to de-arm somebody, etc. Anyway, all that notwithstanding, Sean lined it up to have this incredible guy whose name is Raul Martinez Jr. come. He owns Rogue Methods. Raul is actually going to be on the podcast at some point in the near future. Raul, he trains the most dangerous men on the planet. This guy's mind, when it comes to strategy and skill set and understanding how the brain works and how to, everything from learning how to de-arm somebody that's got a gun pointed at you, how to engage in hand-to-hand combat in a way that gives you leverage of the body. I mean, he's trained in jiu-jitsu and judo, I believe. He's boxed. He's done tours in the Middle East. He's trained Secret Service and law enforcement and SWAT teams. I mean, this guy is just a badass. So he knows every angle of the violence game. Well, Sean invited him into Utah to do a 2-day training of these type of skill sets for himself and his family and some of his friends, and I just had the privilege of being a part of this weekend. So let me just recap what that means. I was trained for 2 days on learning defensive skills, hand-to-hand combat, weapons defense training, medical things like how to engage a tourniquet in the middle of a high chaos situation, how to, deflect knives knife fights and knife wielding, ways to use my body in combat that gives me leverage and understanding angles and understanding aspects of the experience of those type of encounters that make it so that I'm mentally prepared for everything and physically prepared. It was bananas, dude. Like, it was one of the most eye-opening and humbling experiences that I've ever had, because until you've recreated or trained for violent situations like that, you forget how taxing it is in the moment to deal with it. Like right now, if you were to envision what would happen to you if you're with your family and you're walking down the street in some downtown somewhere in the United States and somebody comes up on you and pulls a gun on you. Would you know how to handle that situation? Would you know what to look for to see how serious the threat is? Would you know how to communicate with the person that is attempting to harm you in those moments? Because most people have watched Jason Statham movies and like, oh, I know what to do. I'd be a badass, but you freeze. Like the fight or flight response of the human being is real. And until you put yourself in those positions, most people don't know how they would handle it. And I'll follow it up. Most people suck. They flounder, they fail, they put themselves in further harm's way, or they do things in those moments that they don't need to that make it worse for them. So I'm going through all these scenarios, and like it's literally like, I mean, I'm going toe to toe with grown ass men that are trying to pop my head off. Like we are recreating potential scenarios of physical violence. I mean, I got punched. I got gun pulled on me. I mean, it was a simulation gun. It looked and felt and everything like a real gun, and it even had a blank round in it, a round that didn't shoot out the barrel, but it shot out the casing, so it could feel like what it was like going off. I'm in these situations looking at this and experiencing this and realizing, oh no, there's a lot I don't know. I would cower before knowing this if I was ever put in a situation like this where I was having to defend myself or my family. The barrier between violence and civility is very, very thin. I'll say it again and again. It's very, very thin. And the idea of even the threat of return violence can change an entire scenario. When you look at these typical kind of run-of-the-mill criminals, go to Instagram or YouTube and look at these videos of people being robbed at gunpoint. These people doing the robbing, they're not trained assassins. They're kind of dumb. They're idiots that don't understand the power of the gun they're wielding and don't understand the fact that like they're very exposed most of the time on being able to be de-escalated and returned around and be basically kicked out the door. I didn't realize that until this last weekend. I saw things in my own awareness and experiences that I had in my own body. I'm in shape, man. Like I work out 5 to 6 days a week. It includes weight training. It includes high intensity sprints. Like I am no slouch when it comes to my physical fitness. But when I was going toe to toe with grown men that had skill sets far above mine in fighting and jujitsu and training, I got my ass handed to me. Many, many times I would be sitting there on my knees on the grass, having just gotten the wind kicked out of me, realizing, wow, I didn't know what that was like. I hadn't taken a punch as a grown man. And when I took that first punch, I realized, oh, well, okay. It's not as bad as I thought. Like I realize now that the threat of like that doesn't scare me anymore in a way that it used to, because I'd built up in my mind this fear of violence. I was more afraid of violence than sticking up for myself. And that's pathetic. And you might be in that same position where you're thinking to yourself, like, oh, I don't want to fight. I don't want to have to deal with that. Anything, I'll de-escalate. I'll talk them out of it. Okay, that's a very real possibility. But if that's where your end barrier is and violence is still being pushed upon you in whatever that scenario is, whether it be robbery or whether it be some sort of assault or whatever, you're going to lose. I'm here to encourage you to learn how to be violent. Not to be violent, but to learn how to protect, how to make sure that you're not exposing yourself, how to make sure to be offensive in the right ways for the purpose of defense, if that makes sense. Now, one of the reasons I bring this up and one of the lessons that I learned coincides with one of the main themes of last week's episode. One of the biggest challenges that I faced when I was in these drills and in these moments of, learning how to, de-arm a suspect or to, truly use my head in the nape, shoulder, neck area of another person to gain leverage for movement on pushing them where I want them to go, or how to use my body to protect against somebody trying to remove my firearm, whatever the scenario was. I learned that until you practice those type of scenarios, you don't realize how much your emotions are flailing about. Last week, I talked about controlling your emotions. Learning the strategies of violence and learning how to use violence in a proper way requires you to control your emotions, requires you to breathe. There would be times where, like in this one scenario where I was laying flat on the ground and I've created a holster with a gun on my chest, trying to keep it out of the hands of the person who's trying to rip the gun from my hands. And my breath, I'd be holding my breath. And then I would hear from my coach being reminded, breathe. And I would have to settle in and actually breathe, and I would find that my wits were returning to me. I was becoming more present in my body, and I was able to then move in a way that was powerful and safe. All because I was controlling what was not being controlled before. My breath, my emotions, my feelings. There was one time where I realized how key of a part that is when it comes to the timing associated with life and death. One of the exercises that we had to do was we had to learn how to use a tourniquet and how to use it properly, how to assess whether the wound that had been created needed a tourniquet or not, and if it did, how to use it, where to place it, the whole deal. So we spent a part of the time doing that, and then there was even an exercise where we were sitting in a car and the windows were down and we had to go in to the person sitting in the car and address a tourniquet, or if you were the person sitting in the car at the same time as somebody trying to address a tourniquet on one of your legs, you would be trying to do your own on the other leg to simulate chaos, to simulate uncertainty. So we did all this work in learning how to use tourniquets, right? Well, then a couple hours later, we have headgear on and boxing gloves, or these very small gloves, and we're required to put our foreheads together, and we're just body shots, trying to keep our angles and keep our bodies balanced so that we weren't over our toes too much or behind our heels, using them as leverage. We were able to maintain positioning and balance in a fighting position so that you would always be assertively in control. And we're swinging, bro. We're pop, punching each other. I mean, I'm taking hits to the side of the head. I'm taking hits to the back of the head and my sides, everything. We go for a certain specific timed round. Round is over, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting and my heart rate is peaked. I'm at 185 beats per minute on my heart rate. I'm looking at my Apple Watch while this is happening. And all of a sudden, then Raul comes over with a tourniquet. Hey, put this tourniquet on you. First one to have it done wins the round. And so I'm in the middle of this intense endorphin, adrenaline-filled experience, and now I have to critically think how to use this tourniquet, how to put it on my leg, what do I do with it? And I realized in that moment that, oh, dude, you have to recreate these scenarios if you're ever going to have them be something that you do with ease in the heat of the moment. The beautiful part about this is that principle, that is called creating an associated state when it comes to goal setting. So if I have a goal to be proficient with a life-saving skill, such as applying a tourniquet, that means that I have to understand what that would look like and feel like and experience all the senses, taste, smell, sight, all of it in that moment. I recreate that. That's what was provided for me in that moment as I'm fumbling about, okay, and I had to breathe, put it over my leg, do the thing, apply it, the whole deal. And I was again reminded that like the only reason I was able to be as proficient in that moment as I was in that exercise after having just fought a grown-ass man was because I was able to control my emotion in that moment. But I felt and recognized the chaos of that emotion. It was really, really crazy. So why do I bring this up with you? Because I heard a very interesting quote to start this weekend of training. And the quote was this: "You are your own first responder." If something happens in your life, you are your own first responder. You can call the cops or the fire department or whatever, but until they get there, it's up to you. And what if in, some crazy case they never come? Or you don't know when they're going to be there, and it's a life and death situation. Somebody's gotten hurt, or there's an injury, an assault, something that is very time sensitive to save a life, and the first responders aren't there. You are your own first responder. So that means in a very real way, you are the one required to learn the skill sets, to adopt the mindsets, to be able to handle that for yourself. That means looking at the world a little bit differently too. That means looking at it through a preparation eyes. It means looking at it with eyes of preparedness. What would I need if this was the scenario? And then providing it for yourself. I was pretty humbled because at the time I realized I don't have firearms in the places I need firearms in my home. I don't have a medical kit in my car. There's a lot of things that I'm not, or up to that point, wasn't prepared for. Now I am, because it matters to me now. It became something that I didn't know what I didn't know, and now that I know what I don't know, and so I'm bridging that gap so that I know it. That sounded like a mouthful, bro. I didn't know what I didn't know, and then it went from being something that I know that I didn't know, and now that I know, no. All right. Anyway, there's something else that I've learned as well, and that's that history actually favors violence. Look at our culture right now. History favors violence. There's been no massive historical redirect that didn't come with violence. And so understanding that, when you look at the nut jobs we're dealing with right now in the world, you better learn this stuff, man. Because one of two things is going to happen. Violence is going to be imposed upon you at a certain point, or you will be the imposer. And if you are in defense of freedom and in defense of things that are important to you in the Constitution of the United States, I'm not starting a revolt or anything. I'm just saying you better get prepared. Because there are people out there that don't give two shits about your feelings. They want what they want, and they're going to come for it. And if you do not comply, violence will be the great equalizer. It's one of the beautiful things about having a Second Amendment to our Constitution. The First Amendment says you can do what you want. You can say what you want, not do what you want. You can say what you want. You have the freedom of speech. And just to make sure, if people are pissed off by that what you say part, we're going to let you have guns too, so you can defend your freedom of speech. That's the whole point of this. It gets twisted into this nonsensical idea of like, well, back in the founding fathers, they only had muskets. They didn't have, it doesn't matter. The whole point of the Second Amendment is protection of the First Amendment. And if you look around right now, there's a lot of people that have a lot of problems with things that are people saying. So learn violence, okay? You can disagree with me all you want, and you can say that I'm cold-hearted or that I'm being that this is some sort of misogynistic, I don't know. But if that's the case, I'm willing to bet you've never taken a punch, but yet there's a lot of people that you don't like, and you wish that somebody else would make them punch you. That was another thing that I learned, is that a lot of people are fine with violence if they're not the ones having to do it. So whatever that means. But why do I bring this up? Well, clearly because I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem that we're so scared of violence, and that the irony of it is that when you're actually prepared for violence, no violence ever happens. Or it gets de-escalated super quickly. Because the part about violence that is very true is it hurts. I got punched a lot. It hurt. I got slammed to the ground. It hurt. But it didn't hurt that bad to where I would not put up with the possibility of having to experience that in order to stop something truly dangerous, okay? You get to be ready for that. But one of the reasons why I brought this up is because there's been this... I get messages on a regular basis about some of the content that I put out. You know, the last couple of weeks I've done a lot of content relative to, you know, improving your emotional state and controlling your emotions and handling things, handling rejection and being in a position of, clarity with your own mind about your own value and being able to become successful and understanding what it means to be successful, how to choose that. There's a lot of the sort of rhetoric that I get back that's kind of hateful. They don't like it because this very real thing happens. People don't like being reminded of ways that they're failing. So if you tell somebody that it's completely possible for them to be successful and to have the life that they want, a lot of times people don't want to believe it because they then have to take accountability for their part in not having it. You know, one of my mentors in life has told me, you know, relative to my pursuit as a comedian and other aspects of success in life, that has said that your biggest fan will be somebody you've never met. They stumbled across you somewhere online. Maybe they bought tickets to your show randomly. They followed you for whatever reason. They don't know you personally, but they love what you're about. They love your value. They love how you show up. That will be your biggest fan, somebody that never even met you. Your most ardent hater will be somebody that knows you well, that might have even been in your inner circle at one point, that just really understands the inner workings of who you are, and that your success irritates the truth in them that you did it and they didn't. And so success and understanding how to be successful is a very important pursuit for me. And it's something that I want to help other people with, because the truth of it is success is not a clean and linear pursuit. It's very, very jagged and abrupt. But I heard recently this message about success, and the incomparable Ed Milet shared 4 traits of truly successful people. He broke it down into 4 different categories of successful people. And he said, all successful people have these 4 things. And so if you do not have these traits, learn them, embody them, allow them to be something that you give time, attention, and resource to the building of, because it's what it takes to be successful. So I figured as a part of kind of wrapping up this episode, I would share those with you. The first trait of a truly successful person is that you believe that you are worthy of success. You believe that you deserve to be successful. When you consider the idea of where you are now and where you want to go, there is no internal pull that says, that's not for me, I'm not good enough. You have to believe you're worth it. Now, worthiness and acceptability of love and all that is kind of an epidemic that we're experiencing. A lot of people have a lot of trauma, emotional and such, that even physical trauma, that has reminded them in a very dishonest way that they are not worthy of love, or they are not worthy of success. They're not going to be able to do it. And so if you find that to be yourself, but yet you desire success, and you don't feel you're worthy of success, and you don't believe that you deserve it, I want you to ask yourself legitimately, in the quiet of your mind, in a still moment, ask yourself, well, why not me? Why can't I? Why not? And pay attention to the answer that you hear, because that answer will be rich with data to let you know exactly where you need to do the work. For example, if you ask yourself, well, why am I not worthy of success? Well, of course you're not worthy of success, dude. You don't ever keep your commitments to yourself. You say you're going to go to the gym, but you don't. There there's a tell. Start doing the thing it's reminding you that you don't do, and that will change in your identity. It will become something, it's a weird sort of like hybrid of choice. You have to choose and understand that you're worthy of success, but at the same time, you have to continually keep your commitments to yourself and your word to yourself so that you don't have to deal with the inner voice saying you're a liar. And that's not even to mention a lot of the subconscious things that are going on inside your mind. Your subconscious is listening all the time. And anytime you have self-deprecating words about yourself, that you aren't worth it, that I'm a piece of shit, that of course I would mess this up, why of course I'm going to fail. When you have all those words floating around, your subconscious is listening, and so it will sabotage you. So the first trait of a successful person, you got to know you're worthy of it. You got to know that you deserve it. The second one, and this one's interesting, it's because it's related to fear. The second trait of truly successful people is they have a healthy fear of not achieving. It scares them to death to not achieve. The idea of not meeting their goal or not trying harder for that next level, it causes like an anxiety inside of them. They can't deal with the fact that they might not make it. But here's the part that I want to illuminate. These individuals have a healthy fear of not achieving. It's normal to have fear. Let's talk about the controlling of emotions again. Does that mean you just don't feel fear? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that you take action in spite of your fear. And then when you do that and take action in spite of your fear, the fear lessens. And then you achieve, and then you set a new goal, and the fear is still there. Make friends with your fear. See, there's a beautiful thing that most people don't differentiate, and that is the difference between fear and danger. There are some things that are fearful, that you experience fear for, that emotion of fear, that legitimately, there's nothing that could hurt you. You're just scared for some reason. You're afraid of what somebody might say back to you. You're afraid of judgment. You're afraid of, I don't know. But they're not dangerous. It's not like it's actually going to cause harm to you. See, understanding the difference between fear and danger will help you to live with a healthy amount of fear of not achieving your goal, because you're not lumping into the internal conversation you're having with yourself that there's some way you could get hurt. Let me give you an example of how that might manifest itself. Let's say you have an opportunity to invest some money in something, even if it's a little bit of money. And you have a fear that it will fail and you will lose that money. That's a normal scenario. Maybe it's investing in yourself and do a coaching program. Maybe it's you're going to, buy stocks, or maybe it's you're going to get into real estate and flip some houses. You have a fear of putting that money out there because you don't want to fail. But yet you have a fear of not achieving at the same time. Where that fear could become dangerous is if you're using your last bit of money ever, and if this doesn't work, it means your kids go without diapers and food, and that your housing situation gets compromised. That's a dangerous move. If you're wise enough with the amount that you've chosen to invest in this specific example, there's no danger involved at all. Yeah, you might lose money, but you might have a return as well. But understanding that gauge for yourself is important. And so to truly be a successful person, you have to have that trait that it scares you to not achieve. And the invitation in that is to handle your fear healthily, because it's going to be there. Fear doesn't go away. I've talked with some of the most successful, amazing billionaires. They have fear. They have imposter syndrome. They get scared it's not going to work, but they still do it. Which leads me to the third trait of successful people. They have an unusual amount of abundance of emotional control. I said this last week, I'll say it again. The most successful people, the most high-value people, control their emotions. They do not let their emotions rule them and rule over them. They feel their emotions, they experience them, they let them flow through them, but that's the extent of it. They do not allow them to manipulate them into choosing something different than the directive of the reason why they're in that position in the first place. Does that make sense? They use their emotions to create an experience, but underneath it all, they are grounded and stable. They don't become whimsical to their emotions. They control them. It's interesting. We can't overlook this. I keep saying it. You want to be successful? Learn how to control your emotions. Learn how to take an experience and not let it bury you just from the emotions of it. Control them. Breathe. Allow the connection between your body and your emotions and your spirit to be real, but yet you are still in control. There's so many good people that are whim to their emotions, and it screws them. They rob themselves of success. They rob themselves of greater relationship. They use this weird fear and emotional turmoil to keep them from telling the truth. Really, really sharp people control their emotions. And the fourth trait of a truly successful person is that they have a sharp ability to visualize the outcome they seek in every detail possible. And by so doing, it creates in them an obsession to succeed. They become obsessed because of their vision. They see it all. So let's say you have a desire to achieve a certain amount of financial success. In this scenario, you would want to know to the penny what that looks like. You would want to recreate in your mind an associated experience of what your life would be like if you achieved that financial goal. What would you spend your money on? Who would be helping you? What would your team look like? What would you purchase? How would you handle things like taxes? How would you budget your money going forward? What would you do with it? You have to have a sharp, visualized understanding of what that moment would be like. Because what happens when you do that, when you can visualize using the five senses, when you know what the experience is going to look like and sound like and taste like and smell like and feel like, when you can know those things, you're creating for your subconscious mind a future memory. You know, I've had this really cool experience in the podcast production company, Media Automated, that I run. There's a part of my consulting process when I'm helping people create new podcasts where I walk them through a visualization exercise of the effect that their podcast will have on the people that listen to it. And it's always a very emotional experience. I'm describing to them these people coming across their show and having an effect that changes their life, that changes their family, that gives them a different mindset, that allows their understanding to be better. I walk them into this emotional world where they get to see and touch and smell. And they can see the effect that they and their message are having on people. And at the end of those visualization exercises, I tell them, we've called this forth. This is a real experience somewhere. Wait for it to happen. And I've had many, many clients 6 months, 12 months down the road say, dude, you remember when we did our visualization exercise and we talked about the guy that was doing the thing? It happened. He had created in that visualization exercise with me a future memory. Something that the universe and his unconscious mind now had fodder to create back and to give him as a reality. It's so real. That's why successful people understand the power of visualization. You have to go there in your mind. You go into the deep end of the pool so that you can see and feel and hear and know exactly what that will be like when you get it. And by doing so, it actually removes some of the fear. It actually lets you know, I could handle this. It makes it so that you feel more emotional control because you have excitement as you move forward in that. These are all connected. So if you want to be successful, just to recap, the first thing is you got to believe you're worthy of it. You got to understand that you deserve it. The second thing is you have a healthy fear of not achieving. Understanding it's normal to have fear, but just understand the difference between fear and danger, and it's okay to feel fear. Make friends with it. The third is that you have an unusual abundance of emotional control. You got your emotions under wrap, dude. You are not at whim of your emotions. Your emotions are grounding and stabling for you. And the fourth is that you visualize with incredible detail, and it makes you obsessed in the outcome. Now, one of the things I want to end with here is this encouragement. I've had people tell me in conversation that the success is hard. And there's a part of it that is. I know I have a lot of room to grow and a lot of things to achieve. I have succeeded in some ways and I've completely failed in others. But more specifically, success isn't hard. It just requires something that is a lot more difficult for people than I thought, and that is consistency. If you and I were sitting here in this room having a intimate conversation about the real specific details of my journey or your journey, what I would be able to tell you about my trek and my journey to success and the things that I've been doing to try to become more successful in areas of my life like stand-up comedy and like in podcasting and in my business is that it's dirty. And I don't mean dirty in a moral way or it's clunky. Success is clunky. It requires you just to keep going when you don't want to. It requires you to be willing to course correct when it doesn't feel right to course correct. It requires you to look yourself in the mirror and be like, whew, man, I thought I had it figured out. I don't. But I still have to put my foot in front of the other as well. You have to be consistent. Imperfect consistency, you can take a consistent idiot and they will succeed far and away every time over an inconsistent genius. That's why there's a lot of like really successful people out there that when you talk to them, you're like, I think this guy's he's an idiot, isn't he? It's because you don't need to be smart or brilliant. You just need to be consistent. And you need to know where your weaknesses are so that you can surround yourself with the people that uplift the things to which you're weak at. So to bring it all full circle, make sure you're prepared. Get your house in order. And that includes learning how to fight just for the sake of the skill set. Prepare your home. Learn how to defend yourself and your family. Learn emergency preparedness medically, how to handle those things. As you do that, you will find a peace and calmness come over you that's very real. I know that after the days of training that I had, I sat at home and I meditated, and my mind was more quiet than it had been in a long time. So do that. And then go back and re-listen to the part about the 4 traits of successful people and take notes there. I want you to be successful. We need more successful people. That's how we change this world. It's an individual effort towards your own success, and then you get into the right tribes, and you get in the right associations, and you start to realize how many other people are seeking success and working towards success. And you realize that all of the rhetoric of living a shitty, nonsensical life doesn't have to be there, but you can change it. And it just requires your imperfectness, but consistency. So go do that. All right, friends, that's all I got for you today. Look, we'll have some good interviews coming back soon, and it's going to be back to normal. But thanks for indulging me on these episodes. If you are listening to this on the Rules of the Rebellion feed, because I've been putting these solo episodes over there, come over and check out the stand-up feed. And if you are listening to this on the stand-up feed and you want to go check out my self-development podcast that has been around since 2013, it's called Rebellion. Go check that one out too. But anyway, my friends, Please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe. Leave me a rating review on iTunes. If you've enjoyed this, please keep the conversation going. Make sure this is something that, if it's working for you, please help me get into the ears and eyeballs of those that might need it and that would be that would enjoy this entertainment, that would enjoy this sort of line of kind of blend of life and laughs and all that. Help me grow the show, please. And any of the efforts you're doing right now in that regard, thank you. So anyway, I'm out of here, guys. See ya.